Hanyang. Hello, I am the Dark Fae, and welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. As always, if you missed the last session, I'll put a link to it for you up in the corner over here. You can go check it out, catch up on what you missed, come back here, and find out what happened next. So we are now on session 31, I believe. So let's begin. So I'm going to start off this confession by saying I felt really good about this session, because I feel like I've gotten better with adapting to kind of the things that are happening, and then I don't know, not like driving my players in a direction, but offering up information that they can use to then decide for themselves like what they should do. But so the session, they're basically on the ship going back to Bulgar. We had left off right before they had taken a long rest, and my players a little bit concerned. They're like, when we take a long rest, will our wisdom scores come back? To which I reply, you will find out when you take a long rest, because they don't know necessarily what happened down in the cave that would cause them to lose their wisdom score and whether it's a lasting effect or not. So essentially, before the session I had to do a little bit of like speed prep because I'd forgotten some things, like rolling a bit for what treasure that they had found, and as well as figuring out what's going to happen to Basil, because Basil's friend is not very happy with the group's failure to confront this thing and with running away. So as they're going to take their long rest, basically Basil, he gets like a sense of like a presence kind of in his mind, and like hands are kind of like clutching the sides of his head, even though none are there. And I have him roll a wisdom save. He rolls a 10, not high enough. And so I describe it as kind of these very deep set emotions where he gets these feelings of like disappointment and then anger and then like a frustration into like almost like overwhelming rage, and it kind of like seizes hold of his mind and plagues him with these nightmares. So he's kind of tossing and turning, waking in a cold sweat before kind of falling into like a state of unrest, almost like catatonic for a little bit before maybe falling into like little fits of sleep. So basically, instead of getting the benefits of a full rest, he gets half, basically. So he gets half of his HP back, I guess a quarter of his hit dice, if that's the thing, and then also only half of his spell slots, and any other kind of features that he has. And then his wisdom score decreases by 1. Basically, behind the DM screen, it's like, for the longer that they kind of shy away from this, the more consequences Basil will experience because of what this entity wants him to do. And so the idea is if they avoid it for long enough, his wisdom score will eventually decrease enough so that he would basically kind of fall catatonic into a world of nightmares, essentially become a vegetable, kind of the way it is when an illithid or a mind illithid or its pet brain thing can kind of siphon your intelligence. This is the same thing, but with wisdom. So, eventually they all come to, finish their long rest, their HP, their spell slots, their other bonus features are restored, but their wisdom scores are not. So, a little bit panicked. Our cleric, he tries lesser restoration, but lesser restoration is only on certain conditions, like blinded, deafened, poisoned, stuff like that. For an ability score or some kind of curse that's kind of like this, you would need greater restoration. I don't think my players necessarily know that. Maybe some of them do, but I don't think, even metagame wise, so I didn't play it that way, which is good. So kind of using this arcane magic to try and kind of restore that like kind of lost part of their sense of their mind to them, I tell Umric to roll an insight check. Basically, he rolls pretty well, and so basically, kind of since like their wisdom and their mind, it's a part of them. They can kind of feel that they left part of them back in the cave. And so originally the group had been very adamant about not going back and returning at a later date. But with this now, they're kind of realizing, ooh, maybe we're here, maybe we should take care of it now. So on the boat then, now it's morning, they decide to maybe contact some people that they know in order to potentially get a little more information about what it was that they encountered, and as well as kind of contact Ferney that about like their quest and kind of like what they have to do next and whether it might be possible to delay it a day. And actually Valkyrie also consults with the Earl about whether there's any like healer or kind of spiritual person within the town of Bolga that might be able to help with this kind of thing. Bolga is a very kind of non-magical place, but they do have kind of a seer. And I wonder if I kind of am maybe doing a little bit too much of like, here is an entity that is somewhat omniscient and can answer your questions. Because I've done that a little bit kind of throughout, like Ferney is a little bit like that. Umric encountered a kind of a seer, kind of a soothsayer of Aremsia, and now I kind of have the Ancient One, who is very much molded after in Vikings, the Ancient One that they go to and ask questions. But I feel like in my world, like a lot of knowledge is lost or unknown, and I think having a few scarce sources that can potentially answer some of their questions is helpful, so that it doesn't always seem like they aren't able to find answers or like no one else necessarily knows about these things. So I think I just have to be careful to not like give away so much and keep things maybe a little bit cryptic or keep things a little vague or know when to cut it off when I need to. So I think they actually go and visit the Ancient One first after they arrive back in Bolga and kind of help to carry all of like the treasure off of the ships. The Earl and kind of everyone goes back to the Great Hall to kind of rest and eat and tell stories. The group kind of slips out of the party to go and talk to the Ancient One, who lives a little bit on the outskirts of Bolga, outside the city walls. He lives kind of on the riverbank near the city. So they go there, enter the tent. It is different than the Seer of Aremsia that Umric had previously encountered. But, so mostly asking the questions is Valkyrie, Basil, and Ivar. Mostly they want to know kind of about the parts of their mind that they lost, their loss of wisdom. And once Basil kind of enters, the seer kind of shifts his attention to him and mentions that there's a much more serious darkness kind of within him, and that it's pretty concerning, and it's different than kind of the ailments of the rest of the people, because Basil is actually the only one who didn't have a wisdom reduction as a result of what happened in the cavern, but everyone else did. So they kind of ask some questions. I tried to be a little bit cryptic about it, a bit vague about it, so that there's possible ways of interpretation, because there are different ways that they could deal with this. I kind of wanted them to come up with an explanation rather than me kind of saying like, you could do this or you could do this. So basically, in response to kind of them asking about this, I said, gods have always clashed against gods, but some gods have a tighter hold than others. It is possible, but it is difficult. There could be consequences, kind of like that. So here I was implying that no matter how they try to regain this kind of wisdom, it will be difficult. One of the ways they've kind of already determined is to go back and fight the creature, hopefully liberate whatever pieces of their mind are stored there. But what I meant was gods have always clashed against gods. Wistria is the goddess of the lurking dark, goddess of madness. She's kind of the wild card in the pantheon in that she doesn't really make alliances with anyone and has clashed with pretty much all the deities, good or evil. And so Greater Restoration is generally a cleric power, a holy power, meaning it does come from a deity or god or goddess's gift. So it is possible that their power clashing against Wistria's could free them of this ailment, but it might not be as easy as just casting the spell. It could require some kind of a ritual, some kind of a skill check, and it may or may not work, honestly. So I don't think they quite got that part, but they ask a few more questions, and also kind of detail what they encountered and what they saw. The Ancient One also mentions that time is kind of running short. How short? Who knows, since he may have lived for centuries, he might be ancient, timeless, who knows what short means to him. But essentially, their kind of taken wisdom is kind of being used to feed whatever force is in this cavern, in this orb. And so basically, the longer it stays there, either the stronger it grows, or eventually it will be absorbed into its place of origination, aka the nightmare plane. So, with that now, the party feels it's pretty urgent to go and fight this thing again and try to reclaim their wisdom, especially also because after this they're supposed to help Ferney, but they're severely handicapped now with their wisdom scores reduced, so they want to try and get back to like tip-top fighting shape before going on that quest, because that quest is also going to be really difficult. So after they get back from the Ancient One's house to the Great Hall, convening in their room for a bit to kind of talk about what to do next, and they kind of decide that to see if they can charter a ship to go back over to the cave, and maybe delay a day with Ferney's quest. So they send a message to Ferney. Basil then sends a message to his mentor, Asmodeum Stria, who is the Umber Lord of Elithmalar. So basically what he's like the lord and protector of all things related to the chasm. It's the chasm that has been keeping this kind of a shadowy realm inside, and with a magical barrier kind of keeping it from seeping out into the world. And so he has been kind of the main party who has been fighting against Wistria. That's another question that Basil asked of the seer, was like what groups of people or what allies did they have that were fighting Wistria, and he named mostly the mages of Elithmalar because of the chasm. I don't remember the exact messages, but he asks about the orb and kind of whether like things of Wistria should be destroyed upon like contact, to which Asmodeum C is a very interesting character, and I can't really reveal why, but he's not able to divulge everything that he knows. Basically, the message that Asmodeum gives to Basil is that the disciples and followers of Wistria should be dealt with, and swiftly. That's about as good as he can do. So with that, I think that kind of reinforces the fact that they are going to go fight this thing. So, the party minus Umric, they go out to find like Kartab and the Earl to see if they can potentially charter a ship back to the caves, instead of kind of the passage they had originally bargained for to Elith Malar. The Earl agrees, as there's some fishing ships that are going out, they can kind of take them along the way with one of the captains, Blitzek, in the next morning. They also contact Vernay and tell her that they're going to be sailing out and won't be able to necessarily meet the 4-day deadline, to which case she kind of projects Image again so that they can talk a little bit better. And eventually they agree that she'll send a mage from Pearl to Bolga the next morning, and then he will sail with them to the cave, not going with them because they are kind of short-handed on mages and rogues that they need for whatever they're dealing with. And basically whenever they finish and come back, he would then just teleport them straight from the ship back to Lovos, which is where they're supposed to meet with Vernay and the headmistress. So, while the party is kind of negotiating with the Earl, Umric is kind of in his room doing some interesting things. He's trying to kind of contact Aremsia and see if he can get any help with Wistria. And here, like, kind of that thing where I do want to award, like, creative use of your skills. But there are also, like, specific spells used for things, like, asking questions of your deity, like Commune. And so, with not having that spell yet, the answers and, like, the information available are far more limited. So I have him do a few rolls as he tries to do, like, use his channel divinity to kind of summon an avatar of death, that he had kind of done previously back in the Yurkasi forest. Doesn't really roll terribly well, and so, like I said, no figure really arises. But one of the candles does kind of snuff out in the room. And he's like snuffs out all the candles, tries again, rolls a bit better, and so I said the smoke is kind of like now wafting around him, kind of waiting, and that you get the sense that, like, a lot of deities require very specific kind of questions. Just asking for guidance or, like, assistance is not really enough to let them, like, give you an answer. So he hadn't really asked a question, he just kind of asked for guidance against Wistria, which I felt wasn't really enough. I was trying to push him to ask a more specific question. Eventually, kind of still along, like, the aid of Wistria, but so I kind of gave him a vague answer with the smoke. Eventually, when he kind of focuses and mutters a prayer, the smoke kind of drifts around him and forms these kind of ethereal words. And I believe I told him, like, quell your fear, beware the nightmare plane, or beware the plane of nightmares, one of the two. So, hopefully kind of reinforcing with them that in this next encounter, fear plays a very big part in this thing's powers. So we'll see how it goes. Eventually, they get all the negotiations done, and take a long rest, and wake up early in the morning. First, kind of receiving their share of the treasure that had been recovered from the two ships. A lot of it had been taken from by the Sahagan, but they did manage to end up finding some stuff. So basically what they had gotten total was about 128 gold, 111 silver, 8 platinum, around like 221 copper, 1 silver dagger, and about 250 GP worth of emeralds. Umric also did want a breastplate that was kind of in bad condition. But we paid like 100 gold for that or so, since breastplates are like 400 gold. Yeah, so they got a little bit of money from that. Not terribly much. Could have been more, but they hadn't spent that much. They themselves hadn't spent that much time diving, and with the Sahagin, it was kind of hard for the warriors to search. So they get their treasure and then head out basically to the ship. The mage appears in Volga. His name is Havis, kind of wearing black robes, and so they just kind of have a little bit of conversation, but he's mostly quiet, kind of. He's not really the talkative type. He's not very sociable. So since this is kind of like one day sailing, we fast track a little bit down to kind of the area where they had first rowed their dinghy in the first time. Since this is a smaller fishing ship, it can navigate the rocks a little bit better and get them closer. So eventually, kind of the moment arrives for them to jump down. Valkyrie casts water breathing on everyone this time, including Havis the wizard. I originally had hoped to like cast maybe like Death Ward or something on them, but then I realized that's not a wizard spell. I was looking at the wrong spell list, but he is able to cast Stone Skin at least on Basil, so bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage is from non-magical attacks is reduced to half resistance. And so then the party dives down, finds the cave again. That's where we end the session. So I'm pretty excited, nervous for next time. I have actually never run a combat twice. Ever. Because either like the combat's been avoided, or like I've never done the same like one-shot scenario twice either, or like the party kills the creature or the combat or the encounter. So I've never run the same creatures twice, especially not in like a campaign, since obviously this is my first campaign. So I'm actually very curious as to how this is going to go. I think they are like miles more prepared, and so now I think that they should be fine. Maybe not fine. Depends on how the dice roll tomorrow, I guess. But I think it will be easier. Like, I think it's manageable this way. With all of their handicaps and all of their spent resources from last time, that could have been a TPK. This time, I think it will be difficult, but I think they can win, because that's how I planned. That's how I designed the encounter. So we'll see. I'm excited though. I'm excited actually to run this again, since I really liked the creature that I made and like the effects that it had. So it will be cool. I hope to let you know how it goes in the next one. But yeah, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for notifications when I put out new videos. I'm so nervous. Anyways, I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!